Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our travel program tonight. I'm Lorraine Moffel, Programming Coordinator with Loudoun County Public Library. It's my pleasure to host the program tonight. If you have any questions while the program is going on, don't hesitate to type them in the chat box and I can pass them on to our presenter at the end of her program. And before we get started, I just want you to know that on April 14th, we'll have an armchair travel program on Florence at Old Ox Brewery. That starts at 6:30. On May 2nd, we'll be taking a virtual tour of the British Museum. And on June 8th, we'll be doing a virtual tour of the Getty Villa. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter. Joanna Kuo is from Leesburg and has been a travel agent with AAA for 18 years, sharing her experience traveling by plane, train, automobile, or cruise ship all across the United States, as well as in Canada, the Caribbean, Mexico, and Europe. And she's here tonight to give us some of her tips for planning travel in this brand new time. Welcome, Joanna.
Hi, my name is Joanna Kuo, and I'm a travel agent with AAA at the office in Fairfax Corners. I have been a travel agent for 18 years, and for the last 3, let me just also, is the sound okay, Lorraine?
Yes, the sound is excellent.
I always wonder on these things.
Yeah,
okay.
It's perfect.
For the last 3 years, I worked through the most challenging time that my industry has ever faced, which was the COVID-19 pandemic. For one entire year, I literally did nothing but cancel every single travel arrangement that I had on the books. So that was years of work that was completely erased in a matter of months. For a year and a half after that first year, I worked to try and be a travel agent in a world that was trying desperately to keep people from traveling. The pathway for traveling during this time was paved with obstacles. It was vaccination and testing requirements, constantly changing rules and guidelines. There was paperwork and approvals to enter various countries. All of this was designed to keep people safe from a virus that was basically everywhere. I can now say that the travel industry has emerged on the other side of the pandemic crisis as strong and vibrant as it ever was. Just the past 3 months since the first of the year have been some of the busiest months that I have ever experienced in all of my 18 years. And it is due to the fact that everyone is ready and able to travel again. Some of the phrases that I hear every day, I'm ready to get back out there, I'm tired of being stuck at home, and my personal favorite, which is people saying, I don't want to put off anymore doing the things that I always said that I wanted to do. All indicative of the fact that travel is indeed back. I did a similar presentation to this twice in the past couple of years, once in 2020 and again in 2021, and those presentations were vastly different from the one that I will give today. Those presentations were all about the quote unquote new normal, and it was all about how much the environment for travel had changed because of COVID, masks and distancing and vaccines. I call my presentation today the return to the new normal as a play on the concept of the new normal, which we heard about nonstop during the pandemic, as well as the idea of the simple return to normal, the concept of normal being what life was like before the pandemic. So I'm basically here today to tell you that for the most part, travel is largely back to normal. This screen is introducing myself and my coworkers, which I am happy to relay this information to you if you would like it. It's all of our email addresses. Again, I'm at the AAA office in Fairfax Corners. So first thing I'll mention, I guess the landscape for travel now in 2023 and what is impacting this return to travel. Of course, there was vaccination and the fact that everyone kind of went and got vaccinated between 2021 and 2022. Last year, if you were going to try to travel, you basically had to be vaccinated in order to do it. This year, basically what we're seeing is that the vaccination is not required, but it's something that just kind of maybe, everyone is still strongly recommending it. On May 11th, I believe the public health and national emergency declarations for COVID will expire. So effectively, that's our call to say that COVID is over. So what we're seeing again is a lot of pent up demand. That's what I'm seeing, a lot of pent up demand, people that haven't been anywhere for the last couple of years, as well as a lot of money that people, stored away for travel and they weren't able to use it. There's generally just everybody, again, tired of being stuck at home. There's people feeling comfortable about traveling, ready to get out there, feeling safe. They're vaccinated. Everyone's vaccinated. So people are they're ready to go again. This quote here at the bottom, 80% of American travelers have trips planned for 2023. I feel like that might be higher than that. But it's definitely a very strong year for travel. So I'll start out kind of basically going over all the various, or I will go over all the various aspects of the travel industry and basically talk about what is going on in those parts of the industry today. So with air travel, by and large, it basically is like it was before the pandemic. There aren't any requirements, no testing requirements to get on, no vaccination requirements to get on a plane. The airlines are back to packing the planes probably above capacity and then asking you if you want to take a voucher when they overfill the plane so that they can, because they're overbooking still, some of them. The flights are probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing, that we're seeing right now. The biggest discussion point to have with air travel is the cost of flights. They're very, very expensive, and that's just very simple supply and demand. There's everyone trying to travel and fly somewhere, and that has impacted the cost of the flights. I would say, in particularly, if you're trying to go somewhere this spring or summer, you are not going to find a good deal. The flights are already very, just some of them levels I've never seen, pricing I've never seen before. Spring and our fall and winter are still okay. I haven't seen those prices go through the roof yet, but spring and summer is very difficult this year. Some of the things I would say that are impacting that when travel did restart, what affected the airports and the airplanes and what still is to some degree, and this is probably true throughout most of the industry, is staffing. There are still staffing issues, and that is directly related to COVID. So what we are seeing is delays, more flight cancellations, more schedule changes because the airlines are having to reduce the number of flights that they have because they don't have the staff to fly the planes. More baggage related issues we're seeing because the baggage handlers don't have on some airports, they don't have enough, they're not staffed with enough people to get the bags to where they need to go, particularly at connection points. So what we are doing right now is being very careful about how we book the flights in terms of making sure that we allow a lot of connection time, probably more than I would have before. 2+ hours for domestic flights is what I like right now for connection. 3+, honestly, for international. In some airports like London and Frankfurt, I'm going to go even higher than that. The bags, if you have not heard of AirTags, the Apple AirTags, I would strongly recommend that you look into this. These are connected to your iPhone and you get an app, and then you can put the AirTag in your bag and it will track where your bag is even when the airline can't. So that's been a lifesaver actually for a lot of people during this time where we are seeing more bags get lost. Again, just kind of really related to the volume of people traveling and some of the staffing issues at some of the airports. So the only thing I would say again is regarding air travel, the other big thing is I guess what we're seeing is trying to avoid holidays. What we saw, we've seen in Christmas last year, July 4th, that's where you're feeling the impact of the staffing problems the most, is on those holidays when they have a lot of people taking off on vacation. And so then they end up having to cancel sometimes a lot of flights. So that is what I'm trying to do when I'm planning travel for my clients, is avoid those days where we could end up having a lot of cancellations. But for the most part, like I said, everything is normal. Masks are not required on planes. They're still handing out the wipes when you get on the plane, so you can wipe around your seat and your tray table. But beyond that, there's nothing. I would not say there's anything about air travel that is different post-COVID. Cruises is the next part that I will talk about. It's a big, kind of a big part. The cruise industry was probably impacted the most because we all remember those horror stories of the people initially that were stuck on the cruise ships, and they when they were having COVID outbreaks on the ships and there was no port that would let them off. There was no treatment for COVID at that point. We didn't know how bad it was, how fast it spread. And some of these people were at months and months stuck trying to find somewhere where these people could get off. And that painted a really horrible picture, and rightly so, for this industry. It was the longest to restart. The CDC put them to the highest standard in terms of what they had to do in order to restart. But I will say now, for the most part, cruising is back to normal. I've been on 2 cruises in the last year. I went on one last August and one in November, and for the most part, everything is back to normal. The cruise lines are filling the ships as much as they can. They are safe, they're clean. The staff is wearing masks because it's not required for guests to, but the staff is. But things like buffets, which we were thinking at the beginning of this, oh, we'll never see a buffet again. That, buffets are back. The nightly entertainment, they were distancing, they were taking reservations for a little while on that sort of thing, and there's no rules or regulations or policies surrounding the entertainment or any of the lounges, the nightclubs, anything, shore excursions. Again, it's all for the most part back to normal in this business. Nobody has any requirements for vaccination and COVID testing. None of the cruise lines do, unless the destination requires it. So we do still have a few destinations that probably took the longest to reopen, countries that took the longest to reopen. And so those are still having. Australia is one where you still have to, if you cruise to Australia right now, you do have to present a negative COVID test to get on the ship. Asia, Japan, Thailand, any of those countries, they're all still requiring some COVID testing requirements, vaccinations and boosters to get into the country, things like that. South America is another one that still has some vaccination and testing requirements in place. But for the most part, anywhere else you're trying to go, the Caribbean, Alaska, Europe, that includes the Mediterranean and Northern Europe, Canada, New England, there are no vaccination or testing requirements for those cruise ships. I will say that probably the biggest, COVID discussion aside, the biggest story I would say surrounding cruises this year is that yes, they are very popular. We are seeing kind of everything sell out very quickly because everyone is trying to travel. However, this is probably the best opportunity for you to get a deal, is going to be on a cruise, because there is a lot of capacity. There also is a lot of people. Cruising was always something that you either like it or you don't. There was always people that were very nervous about cruising in general. And when COVID happened, there are some people that will probably never, approach that form of travel. So as much as, no matter what the cruise industry does, there's some people they're never going to be able to attract. And there is a lot of capacity. Some of the newest ships that came out, the Wonder of the Seas with Royal Caribbean, the Celebrity Beyond, the Disney Wish. These are 3,000, 6,000 passenger ships. Royal Caribbean has one coming out next year that I believe is 9,000 capacity. And when you have that many rooms that are sailing on the ocean, it's just, like I said, it's supply and demand. So again, there are still, despite the demand for travel, there's still more cruise berths that have to be sold than are people wanting to buy them. So this again is your best chance for getting a good deal this year. This is just saying that, yeah, that the cruise industry is back. Go to my next one. Some of the most popular destinations that I'm seeing for this year, Egypt, Holy Land, Israel, Jordan. This is a destination that is very cyclical, I feel like, in its popularity. And it's something that people love and want to go. It's on a lot of people's bucket list to go and see the pyramids or to visit Israel. And but it's an area that's rife with unrest, with or without a pandemic. And so when people can go, they flock to it. So as soon as the world kind of reopened and people got more confident about, okay, we're ready to get back on planes, we're ready to get back on river cruises, then it was all a lot of people wanting to do Egypt. Scotland is very popular for this year. Some things I don't really have a good explanation as to why they are, but Scotland is. Alaska is always a popular one. This is last year, Alaska was the first year that it had reopened since 2019. And there was a lot of issues, I will say, restarting with Alaska last year, but I think all of that will be ironed out this year. Greece particularly is really popular, especially the island of Crete. I don't know why, but Crete is something that everyone is wanting to go to. Norway is really popular this year. I'm going to Norway myself in June. The Norwegian fjords, and then the rail travel through Norway, the Flam Railway, the Bergen Railway. I've got a lot of people very interested in Norway this year. European river cruising is always popular, and so that this year is no different for that. And I guess the other big trend I'm seeing this year is more people wanting to do structured escorted tours over doing independent travel. And I will go into that in a little bit, in a couple of slides. Small groups, that's a popular thing. Small ships, everything smaller, fewer people. That was a lasting thing from COVID, I think, was that we decided that if we are going to travel, we want to do it with fewer people around us. And that travel insurance, if there's anything that gained the most out of the pandemic, it was the travel insurance industry. Hotels, talk a little bit about the hotel industry. This is a part, so hotels, when the COVID hit, you could still stay at hotels. There was never any vaccination or testing requirements to stay in a hotel. But what the hotels did is they tried to limit contact, right? So there was, they figured out ways through the app for you to get a digital key, so that you wouldn't have to go to the front desk and get a physical key. You could do everything on your phone. Housekeeping was removed a lot during COVID. Breakfast, your complimentary breakfast was removed, or it was reduced. It was a bag with, you know, an apple and a box of cereal. You know, there was all of the buffet hot options for breakfast at hotels were removed. A lot of hotels, I will say, have not reintroduced these things. They kept these things. So the concept of the not speaking, not interacting with anybody at a hotel is still largely prevalent at a lot of major chains. The housekeeping only on request, I'm seeing that. And that, I would say, is not a COVID related situation anymore, but again, back to staffing. And a lot of hotels have not been able to, you know, they not have their staff back up to the levels that they did before COVID. And so they don't have the people to clean the rooms every single day. Breakfast, the dining options, there are still some hotels that will say that they don't have all their restaurants open. They don't have, maybe their spas only open a couple of days a week. And again, this is because again, back to staffing, that this industry has not been able to bring their staffing levels back up to what they were before COVID. So the biggest thing that we're seeing, this is another part of the industry where pricing has really gone through the roof on hotels. I've seen for the major cities, New York City, San Francisco, Boston, London, Paris, Barcelona. I've seen in places like London and Paris where $500 and $600 a night is the trend for hotels. And I've never seen pricing like that before. So I know that's definitely a demand function right there. And we are having to tell people definitely to double check that the amenities that you want at the hotel, that they're available, that they are going to have a restaurant that's open. If you want to have a bar that's open in the evening, to actually check and make sure that will be open. If you want a fitness center, are they going to be have they reopened that? So that the pool, that was another big thing. Pools were closed largely during the pandemic, and a lot of hotels have not reopened their pools because they don't have the ability to clean them. Again, staffing. So that's the big story in the hotel industry. I don't do a lot of work. AAA does not do really any work with the home rental industry, the Airbnb and the VRBO. And that's a whole other part of the industry that was hit kind of good and bad by COVID. There was some good things that came out of it. People liked the idea of staying in someone's house so that there wasn't, 20 other people that had stayed there before them the month, that it wasn't like on a cycle. They felt it was cleaner. You didn't have a bunch of people in with you. A lot of times it is generally cheaper, but then there is some downsides with Airbnb in terms of the reliability of the listings, and if the houses were really, or the accommodations, the apartments were really in the location that you needed them to be. So again, I could go on and on about that part of the industry. It is something that a lot of people, I will say, are turning to, apartment rental, home rental, because the hotel prices have gotten so high. So car rental was a big thing during the pandemic. A lot of people, we all thought at the time that RV travel was going to take off, and then nobody was going to, was ever going to want to go back to flying on planes, because there was this huge surge in RVs in 2020, and then it didn't stick. People got back to just wanting to, I think, get to places efficiently, which is what an airplane or even a train can provide. The car rental crisis that happened in 2021, if anybody remembers that, where you didn't have cars. There was a massive car rental shortage, again, because there was people wanting to travel, but they weren't renting cars to do it. They didn't want to fly on planes. Or if there was no motor coach tours, you had no choice but to rent a car for some places. And it drove the pricing of the rental cars, very high. We were seeing $150, $200 a day for some rental car in some destinations. Again, largely, I've seen some sense of return to normal with the car rental industry, although I don't know if we're ever going to see a situation, or it's going to be maybe a long time before I see the days of the $25 a day weekend rate. The pricing is still high, and this is an industry that there's not very many players in it. And I think that they all participate to kind of it's an unspoken thing. I think that they were able to, the prices went up as high as they did a couple years ago. And I think that they're going to try to keep them as high for as long as they can. So I still am seeing in a lot of destinations daily rates between $50 and $100 a day. But the demand is not where it was before, so hopefully that'll bring the rental car pricing down a little bit. Europe is a place it's very difficult for rental cars this year. That Europe as a in general as a destination for Americans to visit is recovering behind the US rental car industry. So they're seeing still very high prices if you're trying to rent a car in Europe. And probably the last big element of the travel industry is the guided vacation element. So these are motor coach tours, escorted group tours where you have a guide that's going with you and you have a structured itinerary. For a long time, these were always popular. You had to be a certain type of person to like doing these. There was a lot of people that didn't like the structure. They didn't like getting up early. And so those people were never going to book a motor coach tour. During the restart, I guess I would call it 2021 and 2022, these were popular because they took care of a lot of the uncertainty that was present last year. A lot of museums and popular museums required you to have a reservation to get in. The motor coach tours eliminated that because you were with a group. So you got in to the Vatican, you got into the Louvre, you didn't have to worry about doing it on your own. So some of the things like train strikes, or wondering if the tour company that you signed up with to take you on a half-day tour to Toledo from Barcelona, if that company had gone out of business, you didn't have to worry about that. Again, if you were with a company that had everything all together. The other thing, I guess, that made these popular during the pandemic was that everything was all booked together. So if you did have to cancel or move your reservation, it was only one thing you had to deal with. Now I am seeing more people book these than I did before the pandemic. Although I do, it's not as much as it was, last year. Smaller group sizes are definitely, again, really popular. These companies don't have any vaccination or testing requirements for you to do. And I think I'm seeing more people wanting to do these types of structured tours just because people are wanting to, some of the trends that I'm seeing from clients this year is wanting things to be as easy as possible. So no hassle, not a lot of stress. The not having to worry about who's going to pick you up at the airport or arrange that, or how to get from place to place. As people are starting to travel again, they're wanting it to be as simple as possible. The other big thing I'm seeing, again, another kind of trend from clients is upgrading. So I have more people booked on business class air, I think, this year than I ever have. People going for that larger suite at the hotel, people going for the bigger suite on the cruise ship. And I think some of that is, there was a phrase called revenge travel, which I hated that people use because I don't like the concept of the word revenge in my business, but it's the idea that you're mad that you missed so many you missed years of being able to travel, and now you can do it again, and you're just going to go all out and do everything that you can to make it amazing. And so I think some of that is coming into play, even also, when people are booking all of their travel with air and cruise lines, and then these smaller group tours, people wanting it done and making it easy as possible. So this is a little bit some travel tips that I can give you, just in general with planning this year. I am a travel agent. I'm going to recommend why you should use a travel agent. I have a slide and a few that kind of discusses it, goes over it in a little bit more detail, but I definitely think that now more than ever there's a lot of advantage that you can get from using a travel agent. Advanced planning is probably more important than ever. I'm seeing a lot of people that are coming in now thinking that they can plan something for June and that they're early for it, and we're having to tell them that what they want is sold out, or that the airfare that they want is 3 times as expensive as they thought it was going to be. So there's definitely something to be said right now for advanced planning being more important than ever. I always tell people to make reservations, do things as much as possible in advance. If you can prepay your gratuities, if you are doing an independent trip and you have, a visit to a museum that you want to do, don't wait until you get there to arrange that. Go ahead. If you can buy tickets for the museum in advance, if you can get a skip the line tour for the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, anything that saves time in line and guarantees that you're going to have that arrangement made, makes your vacation that much more enjoyable. This is our website. If you're a AAA member, AAA.com/travel. If you're not a member, then email me and I'll put you in touch with our membership agent that will talk all about it. But we are a full service travel agency at AAA. And for a long time, we felt like we were more of just kind of an advice desk during COVID for how to travel, and we had to be the experts on every single country in terms of who required what and what you needed, and what were the rules for testing, which types of testing. And now I can go back and just to do what I really love to do, which is just planning travel for people. Few other little insights, things to expect from 2023 that I haven't maybe mentioned already. Again, the flight pricing, the hotel pricing, car rental shortages, I think the slide is wrong. I don't think you have to worry so much about car rental shortages, but the pricing, that's probably the biggest story this year. Holiday travel, you're not too early if you're trying to do it for the end of the year. Now is the time to actually start thinking about planning your travel for the holidays, for the end of the year. Some things we're seeing, not so much maybe scams, but I think there's a lot of companies that did go out of business during the pandemic. And some of them I think that are maybe still in trouble. So I would definitely say you have to do a little bit more research in terms of making sure that the company that you're booking with is going to still be in business by the time you're traveling with them. We have preferred partners that we work with, so we know that everybody that we're working with is stable, but there's a lot of companies out there that I'm seeing are not, and I'm hearing some stories even still about people that are booking with companies that they didn't know anything about, and then these companies are going out of business. The travel credit story, which was ongoing and endless for, it seemed like, during the pandemic, is still going on. I have clients that still have travel credits, and I would say if you think that you do, you probably still do. Or if you think that you did, you probably, a lot of the cruise lines extended the expiration date for a lot of the credits. A lot of the airlines extended the expiration date. So if you think you might still have some credit left over from 2020, I would say definitely look into it because it could just be sitting there waiting for you to use it. Travel insurance is, I think I mentioned at the beginning, probably one of the biggest benefactors of the pandemic, because it was something that people realized had some value. But I guess I would say the most important type of travel insurance that people are wanting is a cancel for any reason insurance. The pricing of travel insurance went up a lot, just like everything else in the business. But a good cancel for any reason insurance policy that's like gold right now. If you can find that, it's something that people are more than willing to pay a significant amount for, because it just takes away, anybody that had to deal with travel insurance during the pandemic remembers the phrase, not act of God. There was act of God and the force majeure, the concept of the insurance company not covering it because it was something that was out of their control. So I think people are wanting to eliminate that kind of uncertainty by finding just a good insurance policy that'll cover for anything. The Real ID was something that keeps getting extended. That's the driver's license that has the that can be scanned and it has the silhouette on it. It's a higher level of security than just our driver's licenses that we had before. May 2023 had been the deadline, and that has been suspended out or extended out again to May 2025. So all of you that are wanting to put off going to the DMV can put that off for another couple of years. Passports, look at them if you're trying to travel. Most people, I cannot tell you how many people I had this year that booked trips for April and May and June back in January and February and didn't look at their passport and had not looked at their passport since 2020. And then when I reminded them and said, hey, your passport needs to be good for 6 months beyond your dates of travel, they went and looked at their passport and realized it had expired during the pandemic, or that it was about to expire. So if you're thinking about any kind of travel, I would say the first thing you need to do is look at your passport. The passport office, as it always does, this time of year is starting to get more backed up. We're seeing the 8 to 12 weeks for new or renewed passports. So if that's something that, again, that you need to do, I'd say that's something you need to do first before getting on any other kind of, before doing any other travel planning. CDC and travel guidelines, again, I'd say that this is not relevant anymore unless it does depend on the destination. If you're trying to go to Asia, South America, Australia, New Zealand, there are maybe some requirements that you have to think about. But for the most part, it's not something we need to worry about anymore. So I'll close by saying why you should work with AAA and then why you should work with a travel agent. AAA is again, I've been with the company for 18 years. I actually left AAA for a little bit during my career to see if the proverbial grass was greener on the other side, and it was not. As an agent working for an organization like AAA has a lot of advantages. It's a huge company, which can leverage a lot of benefit to my clients, to the members, through the relationships that they have made with the cruise lines, with the tour companies. The member benefits that you get for booking include discounts. It varies depending upon the vendor, but you'll get a discount. You'll get onboard credit. You'll get maybe extra bonuses like specialty dining or a complimentary bottle of champagne and chocolate covered strawberries in your room when you get there. And some of these things are companies give these benefits that they don't give to any other agency. Viking River Cruise Line is probably one of the most popular travel organizations, I would say, in this country, and nobody knows that there's a AAA member benefit if you book a Viking River Cruise. You get an onboard credit. If you book a Viking River Cruise, everything else is 100% exactly the same by booking through Viking. And I'm pretty sure, from what my understanding from Viking is that AAA is the only organization that Viking extends this kind of a benefit to. So it's right there for you if you're a member. We have I guess I'd say the other thing that helped us a lot during COVID as a AAA organization is the relationships that we have with the vendors in order to make things happen and to get things done. We have sales reps with the companies, with all the major cruise lines we work with Viking, with Royal Caribbean, with Celebrity, with Princess. And I had to leverage those relationships a lot during COVID to try to get exceptions made when they were saying no refunds, to try to get refunds anyway, to get extensions on future credits that were about to expire. All kinds of, to get information. A lot of times we were able to get information from our sales reps ahead of when it was released. And this was just because we were AAA. So that's another big part, I would say, of working with a big organization. A lot of people think there's costs and fees associated, that working with a travel agency is more expensive. That's not true. Just contact me if you have questions, and I'm happy to explain to you why it's not. And the last, I will close my presentation, talking a little bit about specifically, the value of a travel agent, of somebody, and with any professional organization person that you would go with, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's your hairdresser, whether it's a mechanic. It's why do you go to these people? It's knowledge. It's your financial advisor. That's another one. It's knowledge, it's experience, and it's to have a direct contact. One person that you go to, and a travel agent is no different. To have somebody who knows the areas, all the different districts in Paris, and can tell you which are the good ones to stay in. And who has connections in terms of getting you a transfer from any airport to any hotel that you need to get to. That can tell you the difference between the 4 or 5 different European river cruise lines. What's the difference between all of those when you're looking at them? So things like that. A lot of what we did during the pandemic, and what we're still doing, is we're sitting on hold. I spend a lot of my time every day sitting on hold, and it's with airlines, it's with tour companies, it's with cruise lines, and I do this, and when I'm doing it, my clients don't have to. And it's a small thing, but it kind of adds up to, it's time and money, and it's part of what I do for my job, so that my clients don't have to. I think I mentioned before the relationships that we have with our vendors. In terms, yes, I am a middleman, but that sometimes you need a middleman. You need somebody that's going to go and kind of fight for you. And I fought for a lot of refunds. I did a lot of that for many years. And so that is still something that I can, if there's a problem, if there's an issue after the fact, during travel, you have somebody that can go to, that, again, I can leverage that relationship to make things happen. And I guess the other big thing, staffing in my industry, and specifically dealing with the people that are answering the phones at the cruise lines, the people for the tour companies, the hotels, that's something that is very prevalent. And again, it's something I have to deal with, but I know how to, again, manipulate, and I've been doing this long enough to know that if I get somebody on the phone who doesn't know what they're doing, I can call back and figure it out. Whereas you may not know whether or not if you're calling directly to the cruise line, you may not know if you got somebody on the phone who's good or somebody who just started yesterday. So again, the uncertainty in that part of the business right now, I would say it's so helpful to just remove that and work with a travel agent directly. And again, I would go back to saying that, again, it is a professional organization. you don't do your own hair, you probably don't do your own financial planning. You don't fix your own car. So why are you booking your own travel? I think that's it for me. Right on time. So
Thank you very much, Joanna. If anybody has any questions to ask Joanna about travel these days, please just type them in the chat box or let me know that you'd like to be unmuted and you can ask Joanna directly. Joanna, I do have one question already. Someone is asking, what are some like off the beaten path trips that you might recommend either in the United States or Europe right now? And people really do want to kind of stay away from the crowds.
Right.
So are there any places you would suggest? I mean, I know the national parks are very difficult to get into in the summers and
yeah, those are always difficult. For the US, I have a lot of people that it's hard. It's hard to find anything off the beaten path in the US. Because I've got a lot of people this year that are doing the main coastline and they're finding that all of the accommodations are booked for that, everything along the main coastline. Things like the Northern Peninsula of Michigan is something where I would say is, people are having difficulty there. Maybe some of the lesser known national parks, Glacier National Park in Montana, is probably a good off the beaten path place for this year. And trying to think, some Sedona maybe to some degree is not as popular as that's outside of the Grand Canyon. Some of the resorts in the Scottsdale area, maybe less popular this year. Think where else? As far as Europe goes, Portugal, I'm still seeing that it's possible this year with there's like relatively good value and not as that's a destination I think that you can do without having like a ton of people there. Again, Scandinavia, and maybe a lot of people are going to Norway because it is kind of a lot of like wide open space and not a lot of people going. So Norway, Sweden, Finland, I have a lot of people doing that this year. Europe poses a little bit of a problem too because of you go too far east and then you get into the concern over the situation with Russia and Ukraine. I was in Croatia and Bosnia last year and it was phenomenal. But I know that there still are some people that are hesitant about going back there. But I'm seeing more people booking Black Sea cruises that go to Bucharest. So that's a little bit off the beaten path. And I think maybe that's why Crete, for example, is so popular because it's not Mykonos and Santorini. Which are super popular. It's something that's fewer people are going to.
Someone's flying to Mexico and wants to know if a COVID test is required on the return to the United States.
No, that ended last June. So you do not need to present a COVID test to return to the US.
And then someone else said that they missed the part where you talked about what you could do with your suitcase to track it in case it's lost. Can you repeat that?
Yes, Apple AirTags. You can buy them obviously
okay.
from Apple or you can get them on Amazon. I think they're $29 for one or like $99 for a set of 4. Somebody told me once they put one on their dog so that they would know where their dog is. They're intended to be used for luggage, but as we know with many products, the initial idea for how the product should be used ends up evolving and such. But yeah, the AirTags.
How do you think the future of travel looks?
Very,
do you
very
think
good.
are going to be the trends? Are the prices ever going to go down? What do you think?
I do think, again, as long as I'm doing this, it's I can't say anything more than like the way the prices are driven by the law of supply and demand. That's simply is what it is. And this will level off. And there's discussion of, are we going to hit a recession? And that always is it affects discretionary income first. And there are a lot of people right now, I think, that have a lot of savings built up. They have a lot of money that they didn't use during the pandemic. Well, that's going to level off. So I do think that we are going to see a return. And like I said, I'm already with airline pricing, I'm already seeing a return to a somewhat level of normal for fall and winter prices when I price those flights. So I do think that things are going to level off and kind of get to where it's not frantic. It really did. The first 3 months of this year did feel like it was just this frantic need for everybody to travel. And I think that starting in 2024, we'll start to see, again, things kind of leveling off. Another big thing, I guess I'll say, that affected what a lot of cities realized during COVID was like the overcrowding. Places like Venice, places like Dubrovnik, that were becoming to the point where they were oversaturated with tourists. And then COVID hit, and these places, they were able to recover. The environment, the natural surroundings were able to recover because nobody was there. And then as we're restarting, some of these destinations are saying, you know what, we don't want to go back to that point. We don't want to have so many people. So Venice was the first one that when we restarted, they said, nope, to all the cruise ships, you can't come here anymore. You're destroying our place. So you're gonna have to go somewhere else. So I think we're gonna see some of that. And I think that's not a bad thing. A little bit more awareness of trying to protect the places that you're going to. And try to control the number of people and protect these historic sites, these UNESCO World Heritage sites, these national parks, all of that.
So one thing I read is that one way people would get around the crowds and the high prices is to travel to places in the off season.
Absolutely.
But there aren't so many off seasons anymore, right? People are more willing to take their kids out of school now and travel,
Yeah, I am seeing that more. There is
that?
some, yeah, there is some of that. The downside is if you go to some place that's too off season, then it ends up being like impossible to get there. Like you don't want to try, you can't do like a Canadian Rockies trip in December because you're
Things
gonna
are
get snowed in.
closed.
Right.
Yeah.
But I am seeing more people like Europe in November, December, January. It's lovely if you want to do the Mediterranean in January. You may have some you're not going to probably hit all the ports that you want to go to because you're going to have rocky seas certainly in January versus if you were going to go in September, but you're not going to have the crowds. So I think it depends on the destination in terms of if you can really explore the concept of the off season.
Hey, any other questions? All right. Well then, Joanna, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
And yeah, like I think you recorded the presentation maybe and put it somewhere.
I did record the presentation. Thanks for reminding
me. My email address is connected on there. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have any questions at all. It's been a pleasure speaking with you this evening.
We will post the recording on library's YouTube page. So you can just Google Loudoun County Public Library YouTube and you'll find this presentation probably at the beginning of next week.
All right. Thank you all.
Happy traveling, everybody.
Yes.